everybody. Welcome to Clear. I want to say Clear for Takeoff. That's all our programs are Clear for Takeoff. We're at Fearless Flight Live, and Dieter just came sliding into second base. Diane and Eric have the night off for the time being, and we have a guest tonight. So welcome, everybody. I think if you're east of the Rockies, down the Rockies in the U.S. here, you are having one cold experience out there. Dieter, have you guys got any snow or just super cold?
We have a little bit of snow, but it's definitely the temperature right now that's quite chilly.
Yeah. And it's actually cold out here. It's supposed to freeze in Phoenix tonight as well. So it's a global thing, I guess. So
Yeah.
Anyway, well, let's get right into it. And I'll bring up the slides here, and then we'll bring our guest in. And there we go. Sharing screen, and then I know it's not showing what I want yet, but now it should be.
Nice.
Nope. Let me
Nope.
see. Now it is. There we go. Welcome, everybody. Fearless Flight Live for this 21st day of January, a cold one for much of the nation, it looks like. I'm Capt Ron, and with me tonight is Dieter Staudinger, and we got a special guest coming up. I'll introduce in just a minute. This is a place that we love to have you come if you have a fear of flying, if you know somebody who's afraid to fly, or you just want to hang out and talk about the airline industry a little bit. And we'll be filling all three squares tonight. We have
Hey, Ron,
yeah, go ahead.
we're having a slight technical challenge. I'm seeing your actual PowerPoint, like I don't see the
The
presentation.
presenter's view.
Yeah, so we've spilled the beans on our special guest here, Lorraine.
Okay, so we will pause momentarily, and
But
we'll go back to the drawing board.
as I will say, it's better.
And I have to stop this, and because it looked correct on mine, but that doesn't mean anything sometimes. Monitor. Okay, they always change the monitors here on this.
Well, I will get started while you're finding the right screen. I just what I see is the PowerPoint, actual the program, but maybe it's
One
not
second.
updating for me.
Yeah, here we go. Sometimes when I shut this down and start it back up, it changes the monitor numbers, and that's apparently what happened. So play from start and resume. All better?
I'm still seeing your but it did switch to the Facebook.
Hold it.
Our
Okay,
Facebook.
good. 1 second. What do you think about that?
Well, that is beautiful. There we go.
Okay, welcome everybody. Fearless Flight Live, just like we rehearsed it, not. And with me tonight is Dieter Staudinger and our special guest. I'm Capt Ron, and we're glad to have you. This is a place to be if you're afraid to fly, or you know somebody who's afraid to fly, or you just want to keep tabs on the airline industry. We, of course, encourage anybody who has a fear of flying to join our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather private Facebook group. It's a great place for a little bit of community, a lot of community, many times, and you can please leave a message there and leave a comment if you're watching us live or watching the replay. Tonight's show, like I said, I have a special guest. We're going to talk a little bit about semi-private airlines. We've never talked about this. And it's interesting because our guest actually used one of them, and this could be another resource for some of you out there. We are returning to the LA classes. We may be pushed back a little bit because of the fires in LA, which you heard about. The fellow who owns the studio that we use, he managed to escape the fire, but he was stuck in his house for many days while he and many others literally sweat out the possibility that they would get overcome by the flames just to the east of him. but he made it through, and I think it's still burning. And there's some rumor about, or some thoughts about the winds are supposed to pick up this week here again. But we'll hope for the best for all of those people anyway. I got a little bit about the live monthly coaching to remind you, coming up in February. And as always, we take your questions. And right now, I'm going to ask our special guest, and I'm going to try and change your name on the screen there, Lauren. If you want to join us, Lauren, we'd love to have you come in and see if I can spell it.
Hi there.
Hey.
Hi.
I can change it mid.
Yeah, it's like Lauren.
R-E-N.
That's the best way to just, yeah. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're cooking like we've never cooked before there. So let me I'm going to stop the share just for a minute. Put your lovely face up there with me, and we'll talk a little bit about your participation and stuff like that. And I'll lay down my questions. Probably know my heart by now. The perils of a live show. So anyway, okay. Hey, well, the first thing we usually do, and I could have done this by heart, was share a little bit about what got you and me together, so to speak.
So I have had a massive fear of flying since, well, I for much of my life, because I flew when I was younger. So when I say younger, I mean like early 20s.
So you're another one of those people who flies, and then all of a sudden, no fly.
I flew. Well, I didn't fly all the time. I mean, we weren't, flying all the time, but I had gotten on a plane. I was nervous, but I got on a plane, and it went like we were over the ocean, and it went crazy. I don't like amusement park rides, and it felt like a roller coaster. It was just like doing these like elevator jumps down, and to the
So
point
you don't want to take my roller coaster course either.
No. I am definitely afraid of them, and I'm not ever going to get over that, and that's okay. So, but it was just doing the step thing, and it just kept doing it, and it wouldn't stop, and people were screaming. The entire plane was screaming. I'm not allowed, like, I'm an inward person, so I'm just sitting there taking it all in. My husband was like turning green, which he never gets sick. It was just a very bad experience. And
yeah. And how many years ago was that?
Oh my gosh, like decades, because I'm in my 50s and I was in my 20s. So I was literally like just terrified. And I'm like, I'm never going to do this again. I mean, I had to get home. So I got back on a plane to get home, and actually it was a great experience, but I still was terrified. I could not wait to get off that plane. I couldn't wait to land into my home and just not even think about flying again. About 7 years later, I was in Aspen, Colorado, leaving. We were driving, and I'm in like this mountainous area, and a plane, like a 6-seater, came down and crashed right in front of my car, just literally out of the blue.
Oh my gosh. And on the highway?
It was like on a mountain road.
Oh my gosh.
So I just looked at my husband and said, I don't get this. I'm never going to get back on. There's just no way. I'm fine.
You and your fear get a pass. That's not it.
That's crazy. It was crazy. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And so I just never thought about it. Like, we just did tons of road trips. We took our kids on, very lengthy road trips. My kids were so used to going across the United States. They never thought anything of it. So we just traveled, different ways.
Right.
I do cruises, I'll do all that stuff, but and I finally, so I hit, I don't know, like I'm later in my 50s now. I hit like just maybe 50 or late 40s. And my son, who was training to be a pilot, as you know, was like, Mom, like, you just have to get over this. And, this is ridiculous. So with that, I just started pounding the keys to try to find a program. I got to find a program that I need help, because I didn't really feel like a doctor was going to help me necessarily. I needed a legit program. Sure. So then I found you, and I'm in Tucson, you're in Phoenix. So I went to a couple of your classes, got on the plane, and it helped me. It helped me to see other people like me. And so that's kind of where it started. And then I sort of said, I got to get over this. I need to. I have benefits now. My son works for United. I have to get over this.
So like, him getting a job at United so you could use the pass privileges was what a big motivation. Makes sense.
So that was huge for me. And I'm just like, and my husband's flown all over the world for work. I mean, he's been to Singapore, China, Europe. I mean, And he's just like, it's like sitting in your living room. The flight we took was so abnormal. It was not normal.
Sure. Right.
You know,
And do you have opportunities to fly with him as well?
I mean, I could, but he's so, at this point, he's not traveling like he did before COVID.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
could, but he's working the entire time.
Yeah.
And I would just be sort of hanging out. It would be
Sure.
kind of, you
Sure.
know, he's there working. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I could technically go, but I would be there by myself. I mean, he'd be with his
Yeah.
coworkers. So, but now he's mostly just flying to like Connecticut, which that's where we live. That's where we're from. I'm kind of like, whatever, I don't need to go back to Connecticut. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. So you know, so you found me online or just from, well, we're close to Tucson, so we
right, Fear Flying Program. I just Googled it.
Okay.
And I found you, and I called you. I don't think you remember, but you and I talked, and I wanted to join your class. And you know, we talked about it. I think I was going to come to one of your classes, but then I told you I couldn't because we actually did have a death. We actually had a death, and this was now 7 years ago. So we had a death, and I literally, it was a kid actually, and so I just couldn't do it. And my mind was just not there. But then within about about a month or two, I was able to go. And yeah.
So what are the things that typically trigger you?
Being closed in and not being able to get out is huge for me.
Very common.
Very, very huge for me. Just sitting there and just knowing, like, I mean, the actual flying part, I don't think really bothers me. It was more the I can't get out when everybody was screaming and yelling. All I just wanted to do was just get out, just leave that, you know. So just being closed in.
And you came to the class, that's the one we do in Phoenix here, and in that time we had more classroom stuff because now I have it on the airplane once a month, and we don't do as much in the classroom there. But what was it like going through the class? Do you remember anything about it?
I liked it because there was a lot of other people there like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, I got to see, I mean, I have a lot of family members who fly a lot. I have world traveling family and everything else. So I'm like the weird one in the family. So it was nice to see that there are so many people like me that I have a degree in psychology. I know fear of flying is huge, but my family is like the opposite. They love flying. Like I have family members who love flying. So I'm like, I was the weird one. So I get in the class and I'm like, I'm not weird. There's other people like me.
And do you have a practice and do you work with people?
No. I was actually home with my kids. I have a degree in psych. I worked with my kids, and all I do now is I was home with my kids, and all I do now is I do community outreach in crisis. I work in crisis counseling in a community outreach basis. Like I did a couple hours today. Cool. I'll do, so I'll help people deal with anxiety, which is, comical, but
and that's what I was getting at is that oftentimes I've got 4 psychologists that I'm working with right now. And of course they have some shame about, they actually help people, but they can't seem to get past the flight anxiety themselves and stuff. And
we tell people they have control over their panic, and I have panic disorder. So I've got to tell myself that, and that's really hard.
Right.
Like I can speak that all day long, but to myself, it's like, but.
Yeah. And so when was you just flew last weekend, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It was on the 12th. I flew on the
12th. Yeah.
Yeah.
And prior to that, had you flown any since the decades ago? No. So you've been hanging out.
I was grounded and so I started going to your class, and then finally I started making myself do things that closed me in. Like I was purposely doing things that would normally send me right out into just crazyville. Sure. I was making myself go on a submarine.
Yeah.
And do that. And I mean, that was huge. I'm like, and my husband's like, how can you do this and not get on a plane? This is way worse. And I'm like, I don't know.
In a way, you still, in a submarine, that they're not going to close the door, without your consent and take you down the water and stuff. But it's still a great way to start to desensitize yourself and taking.
It's the biggest thing I can advise everybody is, if whatever your fear is, try to force yourself to do something as you lead up to getting on the plane. Like I did a ride that closed me off really high up that I couldn't get out of, and I actually loved it. It was up way high looking out over, and I'm like, wow, I love this. I actually almost teared up a little because I thought, I think this flying thing is going to be great for me because I love this. I can't get out. I love it. And so that was a couple years ago. Then the submarine was like maybe 1 or 2 years ago. I can't remember now because we've been doing a lot of cruises. and just trying to do everything I could that takes me out of that comfort zone, and to
Sure.
realize that I can bring my panic. If I start to get panicky, I can stop it.
Yeah.
So
And,
far, I've been able to stop it, and like, okay, you're fine.
yeah.
You're
And
fine.
therein you get some of that control back that,
Yes.
you know, underlies all that. And so
Yeah.
you ended up flying on the 12th. What
Yeah.
led up to there? What was it like? What was your anxiety like? And to share with everybody, you know, how did you get on that plane?
So I made myself, I said my birthday was the 13th.
Happy
So I
birthday.
said to my husband, thanks. I said to my husband, for my birthday, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to get on an airplane. I am done. I'm done with this craziness. I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to make the reservations. We're going to go just for the weekend. It's going to be a short flight, but I'm getting on. I need to feel the takeoff. I need to feel the landing. I need to do all that. And he's like, okay. And so I decided, for me, the semi-private plane was better for me because it was a smaller airport, and it was just, everything was just more mellow, I guess. Wasn't so many
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
I made the reservations. I was incredibly nervous. I made them like maybe in November. I can't remember. I made before Christmas sometime. So I just didn't try to think about it a lot. But as it came to the weeks before, maybe a week or so before, I start getting super nervous. As you know, I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm getting the harmonizer. I'm doing everything I can. And I just got so, I mean, oh, I was so nervous. I kept feeling this feeling of, it's such a big thing. Like, it's so monumental. It felt like, I can't explain it, but like a surreal feeling of getting back on a plane. It felt so
Absolutely.
like, how can I do this? This is so monumental. How am I
I
going to
tell
do this?
people that, you know, you're even though the threat is not real,
Right.
for the most part, the feelings are.
The
And
feelings are.
yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Right. So I felt like that. And so then you always said, you know, it's always good to meet the pilots. My son, who's a pilot, has actually met people who had fear of flying, and he always says, "You're like my mom. I'm used to people like you," you know. And so
Now I can tell him that my mom got over it and she got on.
yeah, right. Now she finally, you know, yeah. So it was, you know, major work in progress here. But I, you know, I was really just super scared, and this was felt so monumental. I just kept thinking, how am I going to do this? And then we go to the airport, and again,
Yeah.
I'm super nervous. It's a great airport. I mean, it's small. It's like really kind of bougie, you know, kind of, you know, everybody's super sweet to everyone. It's very calm, you know, very different than what you see TSA and all that. Very
Yeah.
different. You're in there on couches and everybody's relaxed. And
And we'll talk a little bit more about that specific. I mean,
Okay.
not to stop you, but I want to, we want to talk about
My
that
feelings.
specifically. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
when
so
we
I'll
get
talk
down
just
there.
about that. I'm in the
Yeah.
airport. I'm nervous. I did early pass. I went on early so I could meet the pilots and I
Perfect.
could meet the flight attendant. And I wanted to make sure they knew that I was really nervous.
Yeah.
So I got on and I was kind of laughing. I'm like, just want to let you know, I'm really nervous. And at that moment, I mean, I haven't flown in decades. And I started going on. And then at that moment, I thought I wasn't really super nervous anymore. It was so weird. Once I got on and talked to, they looked like they were about 14 years old. I'm just throwing that out there. Once I talked to the
Of
pilots,
course.
I was like, I don't know. They were looking at me. They're like, ah, you're fine. You're fine. And then the flight attendant went, you're fine. You got this. Yeah, it's no big deal. I was like, oh, I guess it's no big deal. And then I sat down and the doors closed. I look at my husband. I go, guess I'm not turning around now. Guess I'm in it to win it. And he goes,
Did you
"You're in it to
feel a
win it."
little? Did you feel a little higher sense of obligation since it was a more intimate setting as well? You know, where you kind of know people. Like it's not, like rather than have 170 people, you only had a few. You know, for a fraction.
There was more like I think there was like 16 people on board.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like nobody really talked to each other. And nobody really,
Okay.
you know, everybody did their thing. In fact, I think I had an incredibly nervous flyer in front of me. I think she was more nervous than I was, which was really crazy. Because she was one of these, her windows were all closed. She's not looking out. She's looking down at her phone the whole time. And I thought, I think she's more nervous.
That's pretty good sign.
It was pretty good. Yeah. So here I am. My windows are up. I can't explain it, but I sat in that seat. I literally looked at my husband and said, I guess there's no turning back. I guess I'm in it to win it. He goes, you sure are. And then she's up there talking, doing all the flight stuff.
Right.
And I just sitting there, just getting my belt on, and I'm drinking my water, and I'm just looking out the window, and it's like he starts to go, and I'm like, I can't explain it. My heart rate was completely normal.
Sure.
I didn't feel anxious really at all. I could not wait to take off. I was like, come on. He sat at the runway for like 10 minutes. I'm like, come on.
Some enthusiasm and excitement.
Yes, excitement.
Yeah.
So we go down the runway and I was in my element. I was like, this is so fun. And I'm looking out the window. I look over at my husband. I'm like, yeah, like, I'm all excited. I'm almost ready to cry. I'm so excited. And the only thing that got me scared that I kind of started to get a little was when they took off and it turned like how they like this, where the wing was up kind of. We were sort of turned. We were turning and I felt a little like, oh my God, I looked out the window and Phoenix was just kind of right there sideways.
Sure.
That freaked me out. I was like, and he's like, my husband's like, deep breaths. It's just turning. It's normal. It just has to turn. It's going to go straight. We're good. Within minutes, of course, less than minutes, it went straight. And I was like,
sounds like he did a great job coaching you right then.
Big time. Big time. He
so
was like,
so the first time really, well, one of the things that I'll go back just a minute. You said, you weren't as nervous as you thought, if I remember correctly, and that's one thing I'd love to emphasize, because I've had people that they come on, they know me for a month, maybe they know me for 2 years or whatever, and they'll come on and they'll say, just as they're getting ready to fly, they say, I'm nervous because I'm not nervous as I thought I would be,
Right.
And so that's not surprising that you weren't, but then they had that peak experience, and it sounds like your husband was able to coach you right through that.
He was able, he was really able to, because he saw that turn thing. He's like, he could tell I was like, oh, it was like too amusement park for me. And he's like, it's going to straighten out. It's normal. It's just turning. And I thought to myself, yeah, it's just turning. They have to turn. We can't just go straight. So then I'm like, of course, but I just decided not to look out until it went straight. And then I looked out.
And so I'm going to put those slides up, and I had those slides that I had that you had given me of the picture, and so as you know, I tell people, hey, if they got Wi-Fi and you feel like it, give me a holler. So there you are. So I don't know, how far were you in the flight when you sent this to me?
I don't see what you're showing.
Oh, you don't.
Ron, you're sharing the wrong screen.
Oh. I'm like, I'm not sure.
Perfect. You never know. How about that one?
Okay. So that would
there you
have
go.
been, the flight was short. It was probably 15, 20 minutes in.
Okay.
Something like that. We were at the height there, and we were looking down.
And you were headed from Phoenix to Las Vegas, if I remember correctly.
Just to Las Vegas, yep. And we got over the Grand Canyon. It was really beautiful. I got the pretty side, so I got to see all the really great things. My husband was kind of jealous about that. But
and one of the things I was thinking, you said when they made that first turn, that when the airplane tipped, and that was a little anxiety producing for you. And I know you went out of the Scottsdale air park up there, and the airplane, since it is a smaller airplane, it has a shorter wingspan, so you do notice the turns more than you would if you were in a larger airplane.
That's what my kids keep telling me too. That's what my kids keep telling me.
And you can even see, I can even see looking at the wing. It doesn't go all the way out to here. It only goes.
Yeah, it was like turn it, but I was just, and then when it landed, I had the same sensation of, when it started to land, it turned again, and I kept telling myself, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Now what's interesting is his landing. So the other thing is, my husband and I were laughing almost the whole time because we were having so much fun. Like, we were having texts back and forth with our daughter-in-law and our son. And we were having so much fun laughing. Everybody else was just kind of ignoring everything. And he and I are in the back of the plane by ourselves, just laughing. Right. I mean, so we were having a blast. And then we went to, land, and the guy who landed, my son always talked to me about landings. That was his big thing. He wanted to be a good lander. He wanted to make sure he didn't hit
That's the last thing that the passengers remember.
He's like, I got to make sure I'm graceful. So what did we get? And I laughed so hard. It hit so hard on the runway. I mean, it just went bam. And I was in hysterics. And my husband looked at me and went, woo, like that. And I just started cracking up laughing. And I said, if Ryan was here, just if our son was here, he would love that, because he always was like, oh, these landings.
Here's one of the comments you sent me about everybody looking so young, which I can identify with. As I got older, I used to be the youngest guy in the crew, and by the time I retired, I'm the oldest guy out there.
They were young,
and then you shared the landing there, and I heard a joke. I stole this from the flight attendants at Southwest years ago. They said, that wasn't my fault. That wasn't the pilot's fault. That was the asphalt.
My son's only he's 31. He looks young for his age, and people say that to him all the time. But these guys, I think, were probably younger than him yet, because they were like, this is still, they're trying to get the hours to go to like United. You can actually work for JSX and get to United. So
Yeah.
these guys are actually trying, they're probably more
Absolutely.
like mid-20s. So they're,
Yeah.
they did good. I was really
Particularly
impressed.
the guys in the right seat. Sometimes now the
Yes.
pay is adjusted, so you get older people in the left seat and they can make a career out of it. But you know, this is a great opportunity. So your son, how old's your son now?
He just turned 30. Well, he's 31. Yeah, he's 31.
Okay, and how long's he been working? How long's he been a pilot?
So he's been working, I'm gonna say he was 28 when he went on with the American. And
Okay,
then he decided to leave American, go to United in the last, I think so, 2 years. So he's been like like 4 years. But he's been like he was teaching because he did
yeah,
not do military. He was teaching and then he got enough
instructor.
hours and went
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Right. And that's in my era, that was insane. You never, when I left the military when I was 29 and a half, turned in my resumes to all the major airlines. This is 1977. And in 6 months, I turned 30 and they sent me a form letter that said, you're too old. That's what it was like in the late 70s. Now, you took the first airline of any consequence that would take you because you don't move laterally a lot. And your son is having an experience that a lot of people have. He has choices. He can leave American and go to United. That's unheard of. And just share, because people want to know when they see these youngsters, these junior high kids sitting up there in the cockpit, how much, when you look at your son, other than a typical mother's pride, how much do you admire what he's accomplished?
I mean, like it overwhelms me. It absolutely overwhelms me. And I know, because as my husband and I we put him through college and all that. We know the amount of hours he has. We know what he did. We know the amount of work he did.
Yeah.
We know it was like literally just blood, sweat, and tears for years. He worked so hard to get this. And then when he actually got he had interviews like you could not believe. He had one after that, like Alaska, American, United, they all interviewed him, and he was like, I think if I get American, I'm going to take it. So he did. Yeah. And then I don't know exactly why he wasn't as happy, and so he left and went to United, and he's been very happy with United. So for whatever
it has a lot to do with the demographics of the pilots. The ages of the captains and how many are going to retire and how fast can you move into the left seat. And I'd love to meet him someday maybe, but that's what goes on like that. So you haven't had a chance to fly with him? Is that on your bucket list?
It is on my bucket list. Everybody in my family wants to. The only person that's ever flown with him is his wife, who's made a point of saying, I'm just going to go. Yeah. And I mean, because she has made her job, she basically caters to making sure she's off now when he is, because, pilots do okay financially. So she doesn't have to work crazy hours. She can just work when when he's not in town. So that way they're together, or she can go with him even. And so she has flown with him, and she loves to hear his voice, and she loves all that.
My folks had the opportunity to ride on about 2 or 3 of my flights. They used my past privileges a lot, and hopefully you'll do. And I had all my kids on my flights, and I won't tell you, but I've actually had my kids on the jump seat, which you wouldn't even consider doing that today. But it's terrific when your loved ones are there with you. Let me just shift a little bit and let's talk a little bit more about, did your airplane look something like this one?
It looked exactly like that.
Okay. So this is JSX, and I put a couple of slides in there, and it's great to have you here because I've touched on it a little bit before. I actually called JSX and try to get somebody to come on the show, and maybe now I'll be a little bit more motivated to do that. And talk to her. How did you find out about these guys?
So I mean, it's actually, so I met a woman through your program that actually wanted to do private with me because we both had the same fear. So she put it out there on Facebook. Hey, anybody want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. But so we both joined SetJet. Yeah. Now it's a little bit more expensive. You have to be a member. And for me, it was kind of like, I didn't even care because I just wanted to get back on a plane. And I was kind of like, my husband and I both looked at it as, this is worth it. It's like, think of it as therapy, if you will. It's worth it. So I joined and it didn't work out that we were able to go. So then SetJet closed. They literally just overnight.
Shut down.
They shut down with no warning. They shut down. So we were all members. We had to all, get in touch with them, get our memberships dropped because we were still paying. So it was all really goofy and weird. So I don't know what happened there. I really don't. But anyway, so someone had told me, I think it was her, my friend I met through your program, told me, well, there's JSX I've heard about. So then I went in and looked into them, and I went, ooh, that looks good.
Yeah.
Not as good
And
as SetJet, but it looks good.
I've got some slides coming up to show there's a large variability. I did a lot of my education for myself today because I had not looked in this much detail without you motivated me to do that. But these are some of the benefits, you know, as you already talked about, reduced crowds going through security. It's more efficient. I mean, when you're flying out of Scottsdale, Muni, you get on the airplane, you push back, you taxi out, and you're in the air probably within 5 minutes or so from the time you shut it. And you don't sit in the airplane for 30 minutes at the gate either, typically, right? You know, how many seats do you remember that they had in there? Was it you said about 16 people? Was it about half full, maybe?
It was we had maybe, so we were 14. We were seats 14, and there was like a couple behind us, and that was it.
Okay.
So 20, maybe less than 20. I mean,
so there's 2 seats on either one on
one
either
side
side,
on either side,
one aisle and a seat on either side.
Yes. And you had like business class size, so you could stretch out.
Yes.
You know, it was actually
you didn't have your knees up under your chin either, probably. Yeah.
No.
And probably nice and plush.
And
Nice. Yeah. And the thing that surprised me when I was looking at JetX or JSX, it looked like the fares were fairly reasonable. You went to, and I don't want to pry too much, but it was fairly affordable to go to
I
Vegas.
thought it was extremely affordable. I mean, everybody has their sort of thresholds or what they can afford or what they will afford, what they want to afford.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody's different that way. But for me, I thought it was extremely reasonable. We spent like maybe 500 for both of us to go. So I could have probably
that's
gone
not all
with my son's benefits, but I needed to do this. I needed to get on.
Yeah.
I needed to make it quiet for me. Yeah.
And they probably don't have like Southwest, for example. If you buy it a month in advance, you can get some a lesser price ticket sometimes. Theirs is probably steady. So I'm just thinking out loud here. So if you had to fly and you didn't have the benefit of planning in advance, it's at least it'd probably be the same as a commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this you can actually you only have to be there 20. And this is a side thing too, just side note.
Yeah.
First of all, it can be more of a last minute thing too. Like there's usually seats available. So like, let's say I did this 2 days before I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I would have had seats, and you only get there 20 minutes before.
Yeah.
And I got there longer because I needed to calm down in the airport. So I got there like an hour before, but you can get there 20 minutes before, and just, they have tea and coffee, and you can just relax. And then they just this woman just comes out and says, "Hey, it's time to board," and she just kind of points, and you just walk out to the airplane. And
and so did they have an actual screening process like that you would go through the TC?
No, not really. I mean, it seems to me when I signed up to them, and this was like, I signed up to them probably a year ago, and SetJet closed. I signed up to JSX almost right away. I just thought and I think I just put my name in, and they might have run my name then. It's weird. I can't remember. So I probably shouldn't answer on that because I don't really remember, but they probably did. And then when I went in, they checked my bags, and they asked they basically just asked me, "Do you have any of these things?" And they pointed this, guns, whatever. And I'm like, "No, nothing like that." And then they kind of said, "Okay, you're fine." And they put it in the plane.
Wow. Okay. And here's here's some of the other airlines that I pulled up today, and you can see the fares are quite variable. JSX looks like it's one of the most affordable boutique air I've heard of. But and these are and of course one limitation would be that you have to find an airport that it's flying out of and a destination that you want to go to. So that would require some compromise. And let's see what I got on the next one. Yeah, this didn't come out so well, but that's the routes that JSX you can see from Phoenix here, mostly to the West Coast, up to a couple of places up there, and then maybe back to, I can't see, Dallas or something like that. But
and there's some seasonal variations too, I guess. I'd have to look into that.
That's another thing that I looked at. And so this was yours a white airplane or oh no, this is Aero. This is another.
That's not, no, ours didn't look like that. That looks nice,
no, this is Aero. I just pulled a couple other slides up there and just to show a little bit what the inside looked like. And so this is Surf Air again. Just you can see this is a super custom thing. You can see you can spend 4,000, 30,000 down here on a
Yeah,
Cessna.
I like private planes, but I'm not gonna be going that. No.
No, I'm thinking this is more, business people,
Probably
celebrity,
corporate.
things like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
corporate
like
and
corporate,
celebrities
yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot down there. So
I
anyway,
know.
let me pause this for just a minute, and I'll stop the share, and we'll bring Dieter back in here. I don't know if we have any questions there, and give people a chance to ask you things about that came up for them. And
There's
any.
There's
go
a
ahead.
couple of questions. So you mentioned how you signed up with them. From what you remember, so the question is just simply, would you say that the service is any different that you got before, during, and after from a regular airline? Like, is it
Well, I haven't been
comparable?
on regular airlines because this was my first flight in a long
Yeah.
time. I mean, so
You
I
had,
can't.
you
I
had one
can't-
flight attendant, I'm assuming.
There was one flight attendant,
Okay.
and the pilots. They were all. The whole airport, everybody on the plane made me feel so comfortable and so at
Yeah.
ease. I mean,
Mhm.
when I said I'm really nervous, this is the first time I've flown in a long time. I've had issues. The flight attendant was probably, I don't know, she was a little older, maybe like
Yeah.
70, something like that, real sweet.
Sure.
And she just looked at me, she goes, "You're fine. You're absolutely gonna be fine. No question. Go. You're good." And I don't know, she made me relax right away. So
Yeah.
I
And
feel really
I'm
good.
interested in talking to somebody at JSX, for example, because I'm guessing that the pilots are probably the co-pilot's going to be the youngest guy in the crew. The
They
captain.
looked both very young. They both
Yeah,
looked
they could be both of them. But the flight attendants, I could see where it would attract flight attendants who are thinking about, hanging it up from being on a mainline airplane and doing that, and probably a little bit more flexible schedule and whatnot there. Now, JSX, I think I understand that they do go out of Sky Harbor as well, right? They go out of or did they only fly out of
I don't they might go
Scottsdale?
to Sky Harbor too. I only looked at Scottsdale because my big thing was I needed the least chaotic. I just
Okay,
needed to,
yeah.
I wanted the most simplistic thing I could do, and that was the most simplistic thing I could do. I needed
So-
just them
Yeah.
to feel again,
Yeah.
I needed to, and
Yeah.
that is still going to be a thing for me. I mean, it's not like I'm perfect now. I loved flying. That I
Yeah.
loved, but now I have to conquer getting on with all those people. That's what I have to
Yeah.
do now.
But I think
So, Ron,
that's a
Ron, there's a question that
okay.
I'm not so sure, Lauren, if you can answer it, but did they say how much longer or shorter a flight, between given destinations are? Or maybe Ron, you can jump in terms of the aircraft, like the speed or
The
something.
time en route, I'm gonna guess you were probably in the air about 45 minutes, and
That was exactly right. They said it was going to be an hour. It really was like 45 minutes. It was
yeah,
quick.
and an
Yeah,
hour
it
is
was
usually
really quick.
from the gate loading to the
Yeah.
gate unloading up there. And did you go into McCarran, the international airport up there, or did you go into a smaller airport up there as well?
I went into the major. It was part of the big airport, but it was in a separate location to the point where it was probably a good 10-minute drive to the actual. It was really weird because it labeled as part of that airport, but it was the private terminal.
Right. So you were on this wouldn't mean anything to anybody but me, but on the west side of the airport is where the corporate airplanes are.
Okay, yeah.
And that's that's why I asked in Phoenix, because if you go out of Phoenix, you would go out of the south side of the airport and not at the main terminal, which has its advantages too. Parking is less of a hassle and just delays and things like that. So some of the other things. Talk about us. I don't mean to be egotistical, but things that helped you with me talking to me. I think you got the harmonizer.
Yeah.
Any things. What else? And not just us, but what else did you do? You've already alluded to some of the things. You went to the classes and you did things. You went into a submarine and things like that.
So you do a lot of things to desensitize yourself, put
Yeah.
yourself out of that little comfort zone, and know that you can do it. And then as you said many times, and this stuck with me too, about panic and about you do have control.
Yeah.
You do. And I've listened to you say that, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, you do have control. You can rein it in. You can, when it starts to kind of get a little weird, you have the ability to say, I'm not, I guess I have panic disorder, so I feed myself a lot of negativity, right? About my
Sure,
triggers. My
sure.
trigger is flying. I'm telling myself, oh my gosh, we're going to hit one air pocket after the other, and I'm going to be up in that air just going like this constantly, and it keeps popping in my head. I reprogrammed and thought, but even if we do hit an air pocket, it's going to be okay because
Yeah,
it's just doing what it needs to do. I'm not
yeah.
saying I'm going to be perfect. It's just what I try to tell myself now. I'm rethinking the way I've often thought. Just
And
instead
that's
of going negative, try to go positive.
yeah.
Like, hey, you might actually love this. And I
When
looked out the window
people
and I said, I
with
do love this.
chronic flight anxiety, that's the thing that I go for mostly is changing the chatter up here,
Yeah.
changing the noise that's going on in your mind. And
Yeah.
and I have people write with their non-preferred hand. I have them breathe through a straw, things like that. One of the things I'll have them do is imagine something, maybe recite Mary Had a Little Lamb or something like that. And while they're doing it, and I'm talking to them, I'll say, okay, now I want you to touch your left knee and squeeze it while you're saying Mary Had a Little Lamb. And you're teaching them that even though, if you don't do any of that, you can just overwhelm yourself and want to just curl up and die. But you really have the resources to do two things at once, kind of. You can think one thing and you can do something else. And that's why the harmonizer and audio programs have been the go-to thing for me and a lot of people, because at least I don't have to think of the words myself if somebody's talking to me. And if you're doing bilateral stimulation, then you're doing some of the things that people learn or do with the EMDR and stuff. So what would you say to people out there that are, like you say, oh, she's not as bad as I was? That's
I'm horrible. And like I said, this is a work in progress for me. I have to now try to get on the bigger plane with all the other people, and that will give me anxiety too. What I found the biggest thing for me was to, just like we talked about, change the negative to positive. Instead of saying to yourself, oh, I hate flying, I hate it, I can't stand it, whatever it is, being closed in, whatever, tell yourself it's actually a beautiful thing. You can look out at the world and you can see our beautiful world and turn it around and turn it into beauty.
And that's
turn it into good.
That's called reframing. And that's what I do when I'm doing custom visualizations for people now. I actually interview them, write down the things, the chatter that they have, and then I'll create a script which talks about those things and reframes it and pumps new information in their ear there. So
and I got that a lot from you. I mean, this is sort of what I picked from you was, hey, stop doing this negative, like, I hate flying and I worry about this and I worry about what if this happens? What if? All the what ifs. Just take it out and say, you know what? You'll deal with whatever comes your way. Flying, it's, and somebody wrote to me, I wrote a lot on your page the week before. You can see all my nervous chitter chatter.
I saw
and
it.
I've had many people give me advice. And one said to me, she goes, think about it from the standpoint, you are very lucky that you are able to fly to Vegas. You are very lucky to be able to afford to fly think about that too. So you got to think about all the positive things, like, that's the best thing that helped me was just being positive and not being so I always felt like I was actually blessed. I'm getting on a private plane celebrating my birthday, and I've got these great people around me. I've got these wonderful this flight attendant that was just amazing, and my husband, who just looked at me at one point and says, breathe, you're good. And I just laughed. And I thought, I'm very lucky. And I just think, turn it around. But it is scary. And I am the worst. So there is not hardly anyone worse than me when it comes to fear of flying. I'm up there. So if I can
appreciate
do it, trust me.
Appreciate you coming on and sharing that, Lauren. It's really inspirational to people out there. And I want to just remind people that as soon as I found my slides, remind people that we will be having our next monthly webinar on February 20th. I haven't come up with a theme yet. If anybody out there has something that's burning for them that they want me to talk about as a theme, I got a lot of ideas, but I just haven't picked one yet. Let me know. And just as a reminder, we do one session on the third Thursday of the month, which will be February 20th from 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And then I'll do an encore presentation on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock Pacific and 1 o'clock Eastern. So it gives you two opportunities to do that, or you can do them both if you want. And the main thing is, like Lauren says, is just do something and don't give up. Gotta keep going. Dieter, any closing thoughts?
To the person that wanted to know more about claustrophobia, we're gonna we're gonna make that a focus in next week's show. But the last thing that a question was there. The safety that came up is so are they having to do the same checks as mainline airline? That was the question. So I don't know.
Yeah, they certainly have to meet and we will do that next week. I did a whole bunch of research on this. One of the things we're going to talk about next week, we're going to talk about the top safe airlines in the world. They just came out with a new study for a result for 2025, and we're going to look at how they determine that. I mean, Dieter and I could say, "Here's our list," and that might not mean squat. So we want to know how people inform how they came to an informed decision. But I am going to look more at the regulation that they fly under, because that determines what the criteria. But they bill it as a separate commercial, a semi-private alternative to commercial airlines. So I'm pretty sure they have to meet the same criteria there. And they at least have to meet Part 135 standards, which is another reg that you can fly people for hire. So in order to fly, they have two engines. Although I did see some of the contenders here have a single turboprop in there. So I'm going to find that out. I'm going to find out more detail. It was kind of a last minute thing with Lauren when I realized that she had flown JSX, and I had a particular interest in that because it looks like it could be a really good alternative for some people.
Oh, yeah. But it's also, if this makes anybody feel any better, it is affiliated with United Airlines. And like I said, my son is United. He was all very cool with me flying with this. He was like, okay with it. He basically, I mean, a lot of these, you can actually, he said, if I would have known about this back in the day, you can actually get hours on JSX to get to United. So
nice.
They're kind of related. Yeah. So he said, I would have done it in a heartbeat had I known that maybe they didn't do it when he was doing it. But so they are affiliated airlines. And so, you know.
And you flew on an Embraer, and that's the ones that the regional jets use, regional airlines use. So it's the same. You got the same manufacturing standards that they meet and all that. So the only thing we would have to look at is the training and the maintenance. But I'm sure they have an approved maintenance program and all that. So we'll find that out next week. So come back. We'll talk about claustrophobia, or clistrophobia, as we refer to now, that feeling of being closed in and trapped. Go ahead, here.
The last thing is we had a question about the 101 class in LA that you mentioned in the beginning.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We got to find out if he's still got a studio, and hopefully we got to find out if anybody in LA is interested, because there's a lot of people without houses over there now. So
potentially March 8th is something to maybe note in your calendars.
Yep. That's our target date. So, and the last thing is where's your son based out of?
So he's based out of San Francisco.
Okay.
But he actually lives in Tucson, Arizona, where we're from. Because his wife,
so he commutes.
His wife is. He would like to live up around there. I mean, but he's from here. He has a wife here. Her whole family's here, and they're planning a family. And he's like, it's probably easier just to commute with a possible baby. In the future and all that. So he knows we're here. Her parents are here. So for now, he's living in his home state. But I think he prefers to kind of go Oregon or whatever and commute from there. He needs to be a little cooler, So But,
and what kind of equipment is he flying?
He's flying. I know he's flying the Airbus.
Oh, okay, probably 320 something.
Yeah, he's flying the Airbus, and I know, he's a first officer at this point. He's very happy with what he's doing there. He didn't want the responsibility quite yet.
Right.
He's been talking about it, but he's, at some point, I think he's interested in international at some point, but.
Oh yeah. Well, that's where the big bucks are.
Yeah.
So it's keep leapfrogging up bigger equipment. You get more money, and then
I mean, just even what he's doing now. I have a daughter in medical school who's like, why didn't I just become a pilot? I mean, I'm going to be making about the same anyway.
Right.
I'm going through all this.
It is a buyer's market now, or a seller's market if you say the pilots are selling the services. So anyway, well, thanks so much, Lauren. You're wonderfully articulate, and I've had a joy just talking with you and getting to know you. And congratulations, you're well on your way. It's
well, thank you, and I'm sure I will be I will be talking to you again. When I get on the bigger one and I have to do the crazy airport, I'm sure I'll have another little meeting with you at some point.
Well, we'll look forward to it.
But yeah, but I'll probably come next week too. This was fun. So
Oh,
I'll still
great.
hang out.
Great.
Yeah.
We love you coming back and do that. So anyway, thanks, Dieter. Thanks, Lauren. And thanks to all of you out there for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. We'll see you again next week.